Hello and greetings to you. I am Shushana, and today, as you have already seen on the title, we're doing a reading for the empaths, the hypersensitive. We're doing a reading for you. And today I want to usually I do the fire pit spread. Today I'm going to do 4 card spread. 1 card for what needs to be meditated on. 1 card for what needs renewal. 1 card for what needs clarity. And 1 card for what needs growth. So before I begin, I do not use tarot. I only use positive decks and medicine decks, positive oracles. I do not take downloads. I do not channel. I am a professional scanner and diagnostics provider. And I wanted to tell you that if you are an empathic person, a hypersensitive individual, a genuine light worker, you're not crazy if you feel like you have been targeted heavily for the past 3 to 4 years. Let's see, I want to say 3 to 4 years. Um, Genuine light workers have been targeted heavily. Darkness does not attack anything that doesn't have genuine light. It targets that which has purity, genuine light, a passion to help others. Anyone who has those kinds of characteristics are and have been targeted heavily for the past 3 to 4 years. So you are not crazy if you feel like everything that you try to achieve doesn't follow through, or right before you have a breakthrough, there's a speed bump, or you're having a breakthrough and things start falling apart. Technology, electronics, plans, that is all spiritual interferences, okay? And it's always the people who have a positive purpose in life, healers, high-level healers, that get targeted the most. And this reading is for you. And towards the end, we're also going to do a career oracle for anyone that is thinking about doing a new industry or a new hobby. So far, if it has resonated with you, this is your reading. Let's go ahead and begin with what needs to be meditated on for this collective. We're using our medicine cards. What needs to be meditated on? I saw a card that's flipped over. I have to flip back. We have the Tree of Life. So, what is happening is this collective, whether you want to admit it or not, continues to belittle themselves, continues to alienate themselves into a pigeon box. This collective has a problem with putting themselves in a corner and saying, I'm different. I'm different from the rest of humanity. I'm different from the rest of the collective. My pain is different. I'm all alone and nobody cares. I'm disconnected, isolated from a positive community. So those lies continue to be told. And this collective continues to believe that you are not part of the tree of life. If you look at a tree, all of the leaves represent only a part of that tree, and we are all like the leaves. We begin green, budding green and luscious, and then we get older and we wither away and we fall off the branch and we fall on the soil, and the soil becomes a mineral for the tree, becomes a nutrient, and it starts over again. And for some reason, the empathic collective thinks that they're different. So I understand the hypersensitivity, being some people feel nothing and some people are hypersensitive. I understand that difference, but that does not mean that you should put yourself in a position that alienates you from other people who may feel exactly what you feel. So your emotions are valid in feeling different because you feel more or you sense things or see things that others feel, but that doesn't make you any less deserving of love. And because of trauma and conditioning, this collective feels, well, because I'm different, I should just be tortured. And sometimes you will self torture yourself because of those differences, when in fact, it's those very differences that you should be giving yourself more compassion for because you are more hypersensitive than others. What needs to be renewed? Your intuition is all wrong. That's what needs to be renewed. You know what's interesting about empathic people is we're so fast in solving other people's problems, right? Always there for everyone else. But when you need something, when you need help, when you need advice, when you need reassurance, there's nobody there. What needs to be renewed is your own intuition about your own life. You're always trying to progress and develop for others, for services for others. What about the self intuition? The finding how to unblock ourselves from gaining information about ourselves in our own intuition and listening to our own hits. This group has become inaccurate with their own life. For example, let's say someone's knocking on the door, and in your mind, you're thinking, it's bad news. Here comes another bill. And then you open the door, and it's actually a paycheck. And they wanted to make sure that you signed for it so that you received it. That's an example. Whenever you're inaccurate in your self scans or self readings, that's when you know something's wrong. You're like, oh, wow, I was wrong. It wasn't bad news. It was actually good news. So you know that there's something going on with yourself, that there's a disconnection. When an empathic person should be able to read themselves, it's common when an empathic person can't read themselves in their own situation. It's common, but it means that there is an imbalance of something, which is disconnection. Disconnection. There's a disconnection. Once you reconnect, reground, get quiet, the answers come. As soon as there's panic or a sense of desperation, the answers are not there. Somebody calls you, they need you to help them in regards to their situation. You got it. You can clearly tell them what's wrong about their life. But when it comes to yours, if there's an issue, it's because of disconnection. How can you reconnect with yourself? And once you do that, the answers start coming quicker. And you should get a yes and a no quicker. What needs clarity? The fears that are being held. Everybody in here is thinking of the worst case scenario, like impending doom. Everybody is thinking of the worst case scenario at all times. Whether you want to admit it or not, every single thing that happens, it's interesting because we had summer. So in the summer, you have no choice but to spend extra time with yourself, your roommates, your kids, your family, your issues. It's just all over your face in the summertime, right? So now we have to go through the fears and being honest with ourselves. Why is it that every email, every text, every phone call, every mail, there's a lot of people here with complex PTSD where you just think of the worst case scenario on loop. And even if we were to sit here and unscrew them all, you go around and you unscrew what's keeping the loop there, it will come back because it's a repetitive cycle that the people in this group have been so used to doing their entire life, probably came from watching a parent with OCD, an abusive parent, an angry parent, a violent parent, watching them think of the worst case scenario as a child has lifetime effects where as an adult you will start looking at the worst case scenario, fearing the worst case scenario. And you know what is unfortunate is that there's a recipe to manifestation. There's all these videos and all these threads about manifestation, right? Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I have my own. And my opinion is that manifesting has one recipe ingredient and one ingredient only, and that is fear. Anything that you fear has so much power. It has so much of a charge that it manifests. So if you feel like your life is just falling apart all the time, it's because you're thinking of the worst case scenario all the time. And if you can't break the loop, no matter how much you try to unscrew it over and over and over again, it's most likely because of the parent that ingrained that into you. So since we can't remove the loop, we can remove the blank. And instead of fearing the worst, fear the best. What am I going to do if I have all the resources that I need? Who am I going to share my wealth with? Who am I going to donate to? Which nonprofit organizations are worthy of my donations? So, since that fear is there with that charge, recycle it and flip it, and instead start obsessing with positive outcomes. Become obsessed with positive outcomes. Fear the best outcome. I'm afraid I'm going to win. I'm afraid I'm going to get everything that I need. This one is difficult, but it's doable if you take notes, if you put post-its on your wall, obsessing and fearing the best outcome. Put it on the wall if you have to. Let's move on to what needs growth. And then we're going to go back again with the poker cards and see if there's any additional information that wants to be discussed in regards to each card. Growth. We have the sacred mound. So what needs growth is everything that is sacred to us is what needs growth. Tending to our altar, tending to the things that we find sacred, dusting our shelf with crystals, whatever you have on your shelf, a rosary, candle, pictures, whatever you think is holy and sacred to you, your little cedar bundle, where you store your frankincense and myrrh. What needs growth is your relationship with what you consider sacred. That is what needs to be expanded and what needs attention. The area of your house that you consider sacred and quiet, that is the area that needs attention. Is your altar outside? That is what needs more attention. Everything that has to do with the holy, sacred altar. For those of you who don't have an altar or don't believe in one, your altar for females is the uterus. The uterus is your altar if you are a female. So a lot of these messages don't have to be taken literally. They could be taken metaphorically, energetically, spiritually. Okay, so let's go back around with our poker cards towards each card and see if there's anything else that wants to be mentioned. Let's go back to the Tree of Life and meditation. During the meditation, what has to happen is you have to convince yourself that you're not alone and different and separate from your tribe. Okay, so it could be your tribe, it could be your star seeds, it could be your spiritual family, your spiritual soul family, whatever you want to call it. So you feeling different from the rest is probably because you feel different from their lineage. Maybe you just don't have a connection with that lineage. And it's for a reason, because maybe you're supposed to be staying away from certain people and giving more attention to people who feel like your tribe or your soul family. So your tribe or your soul family is going to feel infinitely safe. The people in your life that have this infinity vibe, this infinitely safe, that is your people. That's your clue. That's your clue in figuring out who your soul family is, or who you're supposed to be friends with, who you're supposed to be with, is the one or the ones who feel infinitely safe or familiar. Going back to the renewing of your intuition towards yourself, in regards to infinite problems. So don't allow your obstacles to block your own abilities. A lot of times we tend to put the obstacles up on a pedestal. Look at this bill I have to pay. I have to pay this bill. This bill is stacked up for 2 months. I haven't been able to pay this, right? Or I don't have enough for this, I don't have enough for that. And you put it up on a pedestal to the point where your intuition is pushed down. The intuition has to be increased and the obstacle has to be below. So your intuition should always get more attention than the obstacle. And then when you're looking down at the obstacle, you can figure out how to remove that obstacle. But if the obstacle is up here and you're looking down at the intuition's not going to have a chance to penetrate you. So you have to switch them and give the glory to your intuition that is going to help you remove the obstacle down below. Does that make sense? And it's not so much about rising your vibration. It's not about rising your vibration. It's about grounding. It's better for you to be in a neutral state than to be up high. Because when you're up high, you get targeted. You get targeted and pulled back down. So, for example, recovering alcoholics, you give them 100 pieces of good news. They're going to be flying on cloud nine. And then guess what? They're going to start getting targeted. And they're like, hey, why don't you celebrate just this one time? Celebrate all those good news. So it's going to get yanked down. and start from -0 again. But if you're neutral, neutral doesn't really get attacked because it's neutral. It's kind of just balanced and grounded. So if you're trying to figure out how to improve your intuition, you don't improve it by rising your vibration like other people might tell you. You rise it by getting grounded. When you get grounded, the clarity rises. But if you're up high, everything that's up high has to go down. So you're only going to get triggered when you're too high. It's kind of like when you're on a high horse. If you're on a high horse and you fall, that's going to hurt because that is one high horse. But if you're ready to fall, or you're on a horse that's not that high, and if you fall, the fall won't hurt so much because you weren't that high. So you want to maintain your emotions in a pretty neutral, balanced state, not too high, not too low. I hope that makes sense. Back to what needs clarity are these fears of thinking the worst outcome is like a curse. And it's society that does that to us. A lot of people in this group need to join an off grid community, an off grid franchise where a lot of people get together, a lot of positive people, holistic people, people that are anti needle procedure, just people who want to farm together, getting together to buy pieces of land that you couldn't be able to buy on your own. So if a bunch of people get together, you can buy villas and farms and off-grid villages. I just feel that a lot of people in this group isolate themselves, and that is good to isolate yourself. You grow when you are in isolation. But on the long term, this collective needs each other. Does that make sense? On a short term, do what you got to do, but on a long term, there has to be a union of community. Not online, not online. This has to be an offline community. It could be as simple as 5 people getting together and buying a bunch of acres and just taking care of each other. One person grows this, one person grows that, one person does this, one person does that. That sense of community is so important for your survival. And the whole negative loop of thinking the worst is partially because of the society that we live in that makes you feel crippled and paralyzed by modern circumstances that are intended to function in that manner so that you feel debilitated and hopeless and low, right? So it's important to simultaneously balance the two. Like, okay, I'm going to survive, I'm going to do the 9 to 5, but at the same time, I'm going to plan for the future, invest in the future so that maybe I can be part of a co op and people get together in a community and do the things that you can't do by yourself. A lot of the problems with the positive humanity members, where a lot of people are complaining that they can't make ends meet, it's because you're not meant to. You're not meant to make ends meet by yourself. You're meant to be part of a community. And you remove the community and you put just one or two people, one, two, or three people in a household, it's still not going to be enough. So it's not difficult. It just takes you opening yourself up to social dynamics that will bring you those opportunities. Of course, there's also moving to another country where you feel like a different country or a different village is going to meet that need that you have for community that your current country may not have. And that's something that a lot of people are experiencing. A lot of people are moving back and forth because why? They're trying to find that sense of community. You know, a lot of us, we travel because we're trying to find that sense of community that was taken. We had that sense of community and it was targeted. The civilization of Tartania was nothing but a holistic community, all about healing, all about free energy. And they were evaporated by the dew. So let's continue. Any information that we left out in regards to the negative loops? Okay, so harmonizing and neutralizing the fear. If the fear doesn't want to go away, harmonizing it so that instead of fearing the worst, we're fearing the best and harmonizing that. As well as harmonizing the fear to the point where it's not there anymore. The healthy manner of fear, the healthy version of fear is when you fear the best, right? But if fear is such an issue for you, then I wouldn't even fear the best. I would just try to heal the fear and creating a sense of safety. And if the fear is not going away, no matter what you do, I suggest leaving the country. If you've tried to buy this, buy that, rent that, move from here, move to there, and nothing is working and that fear is there, then that means that it's a constant fear tactic. It's a constant attack. It's a constant external force that is not going to let you feel safety until you leave the continent. Um, a lot of people, I love watching videos on people who move abroad, and my favorite ones are the ones that talk about how they never want to move back to wherever they came from because their sense of safety has returned. So if you can find a different country or a different city where you don't constantly feel in suspense, when you're constantly in suspense, it damages your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are like candy to the vrills. The vrills love attacking people who have adrenal glands that are juicy. with fear. So by knowing that, it's really helpful to watch funny things before going to sleep. Try not to watch the news before going to bed. Try watching something funny before going to sleep, or every day, even if it makes you look crazy. Just, watch funny videos, funny movies. I like watching stand-up comedians, and remind yourself what it feels like to laugh again. Smudging helps. If you're not feeling safe in your home, it's because something is wrong. Listen to your body. If there's like this constant pressure, it means that something is wrong. You need to smudge your house, cleanse your house, throw something away, speak. Your words are powerful. I reject all negativity. I reject all evil eye. I rebuke it, I void it, I delete it, I erase it. I return all negativity back to its source. Those words every single day cleanse your house. And sometimes, as soon as you say them, you feel the pressure remove, because that pressure was waiting on your words. Okay, moving back along to what is sacred, what needs growth, the part of your house, the corner of your house. I would suggest the northeast. The northeast area is usually the best area to put an altar, but it just depends on your setup. Growth of everything sacred, spending more time with your altar. Okay, so the altar in the house in Feng Shui is number one. In indigenous culture, the altar is number one. The altar is everything. And if you're not spending time with your altar, it's like, how can we expect miracles and healing and recovery and protection to come into our house if our altar is dusty? You want to make sure that your altar is shiny with all of your wishes, all of your prayers, all of the crystals and rosary, different version Bibles. I like reading older Bibles. So any new Bible is an edited version. You want unedited versions. The older the Bible, the better. A book on Buddhism, whatever a feather that you found when you were crying in the forest and you found a beautiful white feather. All those beautiful, touchy, holy, sacred items are what we need to be connected to. Every sunrise, as soon as you wake up, you go to your altar. Thank you for another day that I get to breathe. Thank you for another day that I get to improve my life. So the altar is where you share your intention. And if there is no intention, nothing can respond if there's an empty intention. So it's very important to spend quiet time in that sacred corner with our intentions, with our reflections, in order to improve the traffic of our life in our home. So I'm going to put all these cards to the side, and let's go ahead and do a hobby If you are looking to change your hobby, if you're looking to change a hobby, a craft, or you're thinking about getting another job because you're not happy with the one you're doing now, let's do a career oracle card for you. Let's pull a couple. We're going to have a lunar eclipse very soon, if not like today or tomorrow. Be careful what you do during an eclipse. Protect yourself extra during an eclipse. I like to go to sleep with my head covered whenever there's lunar energy because there's extra targeting that goes on during full moons, lunar eclipses. So make sure that you are very discerning and vigilant during these lunar eclipses. And it doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, it's still everything that you do around a lunar eclipse, before the eclipse, during and after, all of that is going to be amplified. So if you do any self-destructive activities, those self-destructive activities are going to be very addicting and they're going to be difficult to wean off. So if you're focusing on protection, healing, recovery, then those things will be amplified. It's also a really good time to do return spells during lunar eclipses, any kind of full moon. I don't do any kind of spells. I do not require to do that. I don't believe in narcissistic activities. However, because we are constantly targeted around the full moon with hexes from, what would I even call them? Like Mason related hexes and things like that. I like to do return spells, which is rejecting and returning all that you never consented for. Okay. It's really simple. You don't have to do a ritual. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. It's more about using your energy to reject the incoming negativity from all timelines, past, present, or future, envy, jealousy, fake friends, um, taking that all, rejecting it, and returning it back to the sender's throat because you never authorized it. So it's very important to do that during lunar eclipses and full moons because the people that try to hex humanity around those times, they go in a circle. They it's usually a circle of men, and they chant and chant and chant nonstop while humanity sleeps. And simply by using our words and our energy and saying, I reject all those hexes, I rebuke them, I void them, I delete them, I erase them, I return them back to the sender's throat. Simply by saying those things, you are using your own authority to return all that envy back to its source to do what it needs to do. Because energy doesn't just disappear. You know, when there's anger, there's two people arguing and then they leave the room, that energy doesn't go away. That anger has to be dealt with. Who's it going to hit? Who's it going to go towards? But if you are in a peaceful state, a neutral state, you don't hurt nobody. You just use your authority to reject all negativity and return it back to the sender because it's just going to boomerang. That energy is going to say, oh, I can't hit this person because this person is vibing in a positive place. This person isn't hurting anybody. This person isn't um, at a low vibration. You know, this person is grounded. This person is shielded. It's going to hit the shield and boomerang back to the negative source. So it's very important for you to do this every single day because there is accidental hexing that goes on when you go out in public. So let's say you're waiting in line, you're waiting to get a lemonade, and there's this person that's super angry because she asked for no ice in her lemonade and they put ice in her lemonade, and now they're telling her she has to wait in line again to get her order fixed. So she turns around and looks at everybody in the line and she starts cussing them out. And she's like, screw these people, I was here first. And she's, waving her hand around, and there's all this energy coming out of her. You're going to get hit. You're going to get hit by her regurgitation. Even if it's not really the lady and she's just possessed, it doesn't matter. There's negative energy that kind of tried to hit you. So when you speak every single day, I reject all negativity that came, my direction that I did not authorize. It already pops off that negative cloud and just, goes back to the lady. That's your anger. You deal with it. It's very important because humanity is constantly being hexed up by your food, clothing brands, drink brands, cartoons, movies, Netflix. There's hexes all over the place. Concerts, NFL, sports. It's all over the place. So every single day that you wake up and you say, I reject all negativity today. I reject all the negativity that tried to hit me while I was sleeping. I reject all the evil eye. I reject all the jealousy that tried to come my way. All that, just doing that by itself every single day has power because there is authority in your name. I'm trying to think if there's anything that else that I want to mention when it comes to that. And when you are in a bad mood, like let's say you're in a bad mood and entities want to lure you into being hateful, bitter, wrathful, or even jealous. When you're in a mood like that, you want to make sure that you're not making eye contact with anybody until you purify that situation. So let's say you're in a bad mood and you're at a mall and you just got this bad energy mood out of nowhere. Try to look down on the floor. Try to not look at anybody so that you don't hurt anybody with your arrows. And you just kind of look down, don't look at nobody, take a couple breaths. Once you feel better, okay, I can approach the world now. We have to be really responsible and conscientious of our energy and what we're spewing. If you're not in a good mood, stay at home until you purify yourself. It's very unfortunate how many people out there wish people harm. Um, Social media, schools, even work settings, you know, as adults, though in work, that it doesn't disappear just because people turn into an adult. Office drama, it's always going to be there, and it's important to protect yourself from that. Now, if you never wish any harm against anybody, you never are jealous against anybody, then you have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about. It's always the ones that do the dark spells, that do the envy, that do the jealousy, that do the drama. It's always them that are always paranoid about somebody coming for them. Like they're always so paranoid that somebody's out to get them because they're the ones that do that kind of work. You know, it's their own guilty conscience. The ones that are always thinking that someone is out to get them, it's because they're the ones that are the dark workers. So when you do dark work, if you've ever come across a dark worker, you will notice they're always paranoid. They're always paranoid because it's their own guilty conscience of all the things that they've done, of all the things that they've thought against people instead of wishing them well. So just like cheaters, like dark workers and envious individuals, narcissistic people, they remind me of, oh my God, I just forgot. I just forgot what I was going to say. It was like, cheaters. They remind me of cheaters, witches, negative warlocks, envious people that just spend their whole life envying others. They remind me of cheaters. What is the number one thing that cheaters always do in marriages, in whatever boyfriend girlfriend dynamics? What does the cheater always? What is that one trait that they always have? They always think that it's their partner cheating on them because they're the ones doing the cheating. So they think that the other one is doing the same thing. And they're constantly checking. Why are you so obsessed with checking if someone is cheating on you? It's because it's always the cheater that's constantly paranoid that someone is cheating on them because they're doing the cheating. It's the same in the witchcraft world, and why I do not support dark work. Because if you do dark work, then you're going to be fearful and paranoid all your life that all that envy is going to come back to you one day. And that's why you have to wish people well so that nothing comes back to give you a disease. And then a lot of times those same people will be like, oh my God, I have a disease. I think that so and so cursed me. No, they just rejected your spell. It's your own hate that makes you sick. And that's why it's so important to practice divine forgiveness every single day. When you are in divine forgiveness, when you are embodying Christ consciousness and divine unconditional love and forgiveness, you are unpenetratable, because unconditional forgiveness is the highest form of protection. When you try to hurt somebody who is forgiving and already forgave you before you even tried to hurt you, they they already knew that you were going to try to hurt them, and they forgave you before you even thought about hurting them. You can't hurt those people because they are in an unconditional, loving, divine forgiveness embodiment. Nothing can penetrate that. But when someone is resentful and bitter, they have holes all over their auric fields. And it's easy to harm somebody who is resentful and bitter because their shield has all these holes in them from resentment. Even if the person who hurt you does not deserve forgiveness, you deserve the peace of mind that forgiveness brings. I know quite the amount of people who are resentful, and they are very unhappy and very ill, and they pretend that they're happy, but their smile hides this misery and disease that comes from being resentful and hateful. You can't cover that up. You have to heal it from the inside. It has to be healed from the inside. And guess what? Where does resentment come from? Where does it come hither? Ego. Ego, ego, ego. Ego creates bitterness. Ego creates hatefulness. Ego creates envy. Ego creates resentment. Not wanting to forgive, blah, 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 because they don't deserve it. Nobody said it's for the person, and nobody said it's for the perpetrator. It's for you. The forgiveness is for you. Nobody said that what they did to you was right. The forgiveness is for you so that the person who hurt you can sit with their own consequence. When you don't forgive them, you're sharing the consequence with them that you shouldn't have to share. The consequence belongs to them. So by you forgiving them, you are separating yourself from them, shielded by your own forgiveness, and they are left to deal with their consequences. Okay. Wrath. Where do you think wrath comes from? Ego. Ego is saying, I didn't get my way. Things didn't go my way. I'm going to be wrathful. Wrath. If you have issues with wrath, bipolarness, schizophrenic symptoms, that's all wrath infused entities that come from ego. Ego wants to sabotage your life. Ego wants you to do everything all wrong. So ego will make you do things that are ego infused so that ego can succeed in destroying your life and sabotaging your intimate relationships. So no matter what, I will always blame ego as the fire starter to all tragedy in humanity's life. And that's why I consider ego quite the enemy, because guess what ego blocks? Ego blocks the inner child. You can't see the inner child. You can't hear, feel the inner child when ego is blocking it. Guess what else ego blocks? The spirit. You can't see the spirit. You can't see the spirit. You can't see the soul if ego is blocking your way. So you can't be connected, feel connected to your soul and your clarity if ego is in the way. Journey. You may move to a new place for work or travel for work. Exploring the world gives you the experience you need to succeed. This is fantastic because it's exactly what we were talking about. People in this group that are unhappy because you're in the wrong country. Needing to move to where your adrenal glands can finally rest. Because when you're living somewhere where your adrenal glands are constantly juiced up with stress, you end up being on this cycle of hypervigilance and survival mode. and fight or flight that never goes away and eventually leads to death. So, by all means, if you have the resources to move to a different country, by all means do so. Do your research, but do what needs to be done for your organs. Because what is the point of living this life and suffering through it if one of one organ or multiple organs are going to be constantly in hypervigilance? Then it defeats the complete purpose of existing if we are not taking care of all of our organs and fulfilling our life's mission on this journey. We have people skills. You have a for working well with others. You could be a diplomat, a counselor, a salesperson, or a head of a company. That's about all the messages I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time. Bye.